Jerusalem is a city that holds a special significance for the three Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. These religions share a common history and reverence for Jerusalem as a holy city, where many of their prophets and sacred events took place. For Judaism, Jerusalem has been the holiest city and the spiritual homeland of the Jewish people since the 10th century BC. It is the site of the Temple Mount, where the first and second temples were built, and where God's presence dwelled. It is also where Abraham was commanded to sacrifice his son Isaac, where King David established his capital, and where many of the Psalms and prophecies were composed. Jews pray facing Jerusalem and yearn for its restoration as the center of their faith. For Christianity, Jerusalem is the place where Jesus lived, preached, died, and resurrected. It is where he entered triumphantly on Palm Sunday, where he celebrated the Last Supper with his disciples, where he was betrayed, arrested, crucified, and buried. It is also where he appeared to his followers after his resurrection, and where the Holy Spirit descended on the apostles at Pentecost. Christians regard Jerusalem as the birthplace of their religion and a sacred destination for pilgrimage. For Islam, Jerusalem is the third holiest city after Mecca and Medina. It is where Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven during his night journey and led prayers with all the previous prophets. It is also where he received the first verses of the Quran from Angel Gabriel. Muslims call Jerusalem Al-Quds, the holy, or Bayt al-Maqdis, the noble sanctuary, and honor it as the first Qibla, direction of prayer, before it was changed to Mecca. Ultimately, Jerusalem is holy to all three Abrahamic faiths because of their shared history in this place. They all revere the prophets and religious events of Jerusalem and Palestine. The current political situation in Palestine deprives both Arab Muslims and Christians of entry into Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a city that is sacred to three major religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Each faith has a long and rich history in the city, and each claims a share of its holy sites. But how do the different religious communities coexist and cooperate in preserving and managing their sacred sites, such as the Temple Mount/Haram al-Sharif, the Western Wall, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and the Al-Aqsa Mosque? The Temple Mount/Haram al-Sharif is the most contested site in Jerusalem. It is revered by Jews as the location of the ancient temple, which was destroyed by the Romans in 70 CE, and by Muslims as the place where Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven in his night journey. The site is currently under the administration of the Islamic Waqf, a religious trust that oversees Muslim affairs in Jerusalem. The Waqf allows non-Muslims to visit the site at certain hours, but not to pray there. Jews can pray at the Western Wall, also known as the Kotel, which is a remnant of the temple's retaining wall and considered the holiest place for Jews to worship. The Western Wall is also a source of tension between different Jewish groups. The Orthodox Jewish authorities control the main plaza of the wall, where they enforce strict rules of gender segregation and dress code. Many non-Orthodox Jews, especially women in progressive movements, have challenged these rules and demanded equal access and rights at the wall. They have organized alternative prayer services at a nearby section of the wall called Robinson's Arch, which is designated by the Israeli government as a pluralistic prayer space. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre is another complex site that is shared by 6 Christian denominations: Greek Orthodox, Roman Catholic, Armenian Apostolic, Coptic Orthodox, Ethiopian Orthodox, and Syriac Orthodox. The church is believed to be the site where Jesus was crucified, buried, and resurrected. Each denomination has its own chapels, altars, and rituals within the church, and they follow a delicate status quo agreement that regulates their rights and responsibilities. The agreement also requires that any repairs or renovations must be approved by all parties involved. The church is guarded by 2 Muslim families who have been entrusted with the keys to the church since the 12th century. The Al-Aqsa Mosque is the 3rd holiest site in Islam, after Mecca and Medina. It is located on the southern end of the Temple Mount/Haram al-Sharif, and it can accommodate up to 5,000 worshippers. The mosque was built in the 8th century CE by the Umayyad Caliph Abd al-Malik ibn Marwan, who also commissioned the Dome of the Rock on the same platform. The mosque has been renovated and expanded several times over the centuries, most notably by the Crusaders, who converted it into a palace and a church, and by Saladin, who restored it to its Islamic function after recapturing Jerusalem in 1187 CE. The mosque is under the authority of the Waqf, which also manages other Islamic buildings and institutions on the Temple Mount/Haram al-Sharif. These are just some examples of how Jerusalem's sacred sites are intertwined with its religious diversity and political conflict. Despite their differences and disputes, the various communities have also shown signs of cooperation and dialogue in preserving and respecting their shared heritage. For instance, in 2016, after decades of neglect, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre underwent a major restoration project that was funded by all 6 Christian denominations and supported by Jordan and Palestine. In 2017, after a violent clash between Israeli police and Palestinian protesters at the Temple Mount/Haram al-Sharif, Jordan and Israel agreed to install security cameras at the site to monitor any violations or provocations. And in 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, Muslim authorities closed down the Al-Aqsa Mosque for public prayers to prevent the spread of infection, while Jewish authorities limited access to the Western Wall Plaza and enforced social distancing measures. These examples show that Jerusalem's sacred sites are not only places of worship and pilgrimage, but also symbols of identity and sovereignty for their respective communities. They also show that these sites can be platforms for dialogue and cooperation among different faiths and cultures, as well as sources of conflict and violence. As such, they require careful management and protection by all stakeholders involved: religious leaders, political authorities, civil society organizations, and ordinary citizens.